We're back for a new tips episode. Our featured tips instructor this month for the month of July is going to be Ashley Arnold. Y'all had heard from her previously a few weeks ago when we had her on the regular podcast, and then I reached out to her and I asked her, would it be like cool if you did tips for us? Because you're all over LinkedIn, you're all over like just the feeds and coming in, like you attended so the conferences, and you're commenting, like it's great. I mean, she's all over the place, and in a good way, of course. And we at least I know we here at Global Training Center and the podcast realized maybe we had to ask her to come on and give us some tips. It's, as a matter of fact, you do give some tips anyway, Ashley. So
Oh,
as you do
good,
your
good.
posting, we see that, and you're like, what would you do in this situation? Or lately, I've noticed this, which is great. You know, we like that. But so I wanted, I kind of gave you a challenge to give us a tip for a lot of current events and that are going on. Me specifically, as you can see, I'm wearing the U.S. Soccer cap here because of the World Cup today. As a matter of fact, as we record this later today, where the U.S. gets to play their next round of games here on the round of 16, we unfortunately have seen Mexico and Canada exit out of the tournament over the weekend. So two of the three host countries are out. Let's hope we
Yeah.
can keep at least one of them in with the U.S. So we'll see how that goes. But I uh, I asked Ashley, how can we relate this, or how can we tie it into trade? And so Ashley came out and told me, what if we use this artist? And so anyway, so the title of this is going to be very unique for this episode. But Ashley, go ahead. Thank you for joining me again on this on our podcast.
Yes, yes, thank you for having me. Happy to be here. As always, always love to talk about everything trade. So, really exciting when we get to, bring it together and make it practical and also maybe relevant to what's going on, like the World Cup, like FIFA, soccer. What does that have in common with, let's say, Beyonce in a world tour, right? Like, let's talk about that and bring it together.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm glad you picked Beyonce because she's a world artist. You know, she tours all over the world. She does all this, and so what does the World Cup have anything to do with Beyonce other than they played in Houston, because that she is from Houston. So
Yes,
other than
she
that,
is.
other than
And
some of the games took place there, I mean, other than that, what else do we have?
Well, these are the little parts that nobody likes to think or nobody maybe thinks about, right? When they're watching the soccer game or attending the concert, they're not thinking, how did all this equipment get here? What duties and taxes do they have to pay, if any? So that's when ATA Carnets come into place, right? Those are used for goods that are going to come into the United States, but then export. That is a big portion of it. They have to go back out, right? To put this into a practical term, right? So what if you had cameras coming from Germany, hundreds of thousands of dollars of equipment? They don't belong to the United States. They're not being sold here. They're just coming and they're exiting, going back home, right? You're using them. That's when this ATA Carnet would come into effect. It takes away the temporary in bond requirement in most countries. So that's also, a plus. What else? It's just basically used so you don't have to pay and then try to recoup, if that makes sense. And
Right.
so that's what for the World Cup, any equipment, right? Any of that coming in, they'll be using ATA carnets. So really interesting on this side as, a trade person to see how this really all does come together. It doesn't just we snap our fingers and it's here, right?
Right, right. I've heard people call it a product passport. I guess that kind of makes sense, you
Yes,
know.
yes, a product password. That is definitely a good way to explain it. And also, when you think about it, nothing is being for sale here, right? Not everything that crosses a border is coming for the sale in the United States. So that's important for an ATA carnet. So
Uh,
another very important tool that not many people know about, but I bet you with tours like this, with the World Cup, with trade now being news every day, these are the types of things that people are going to use in order to not overspend on duties and taxes.
so that is a really Interesting thing that you said, like not everything is for retail sales. So
Hmm.
I guess barring any like Beyonce, any concert t-shirts that she might have printed here in the States and takes it to, let's say she does her world tour and she's in Japan. She really won't bring those t-shirts in as
Hmm.
on an ATA Carnet, correct?
Correct.
And and also, I always wondered because I don't know if the soccer players are when they come into the States and Mexico and Canada because they're all members or observe or respect or the carnet process. But
Hmm.
I'm wondering. I know all the players have several kits that they travel with. Kits meaning their jerseys and shorts,
Hmm.
and they travel with. I always wondered if they all came in with a carnet. I wonder what happens. Like, it is sometimes tradition to like for the players from one team and the other team to exchange
Exchange.
jerseys. Yes, I
Yeah.
wonder. I wonder how you're going to explain that.
I know, right? I know. This image where you're like, well, this is still a jersey, but it's just a different one. You know? Like, yeah, I know. I've thought about that too, because it technically has to be like the same, right?
Right.
That's the rule. So that's funny. It's so interesting to see how trade like intercepts everyday goods and also not even just goods, right? Because we tend to think about tangible services, but here we're talking about entertainment, right? So
Right.
it's a whole
And
different realm.
and I guess let's put that in a business perspective here. I'm going to, let's say, a big event in ICPA. ICPA does a European event every
Yes.
year, and so they also do one in Canada.
In
They
Canada.
started doing something in Mexico last year. I don't know if they'll do that again this year, but let's just say the EU. They're going to Brussels
Mhm,
later this year in October, I believe. So let's say they go there, and I have my booth, and let's say it's not a let's say it's a really cool fancy booth, that like with lights and maybe TV screens and all that kind of stuff. Of course, I'm not going to import it
mhm.
into a different country and then re-export it. And like you said, I guess not go through the trouble of doing. I don't know if they have this there or not, like a drawback or whatever. You know
Right,
what I mean? Yeah.
and
What?
that's the question, right? Like, you probably wouldn't be privy to all of the regulations because they wouldn't be the same. It would take, like, more research. So if it's a country that where you could do a carnet, definitely more beneficial for sure.
Right. And I guess to our previous comment about leaving things there. So like all my tchotchkes that I take, like the little pens and little buttons and stickers and all that. None of that would go on the carnet, correct?
Yes. Nope. So basically, if your goods are traveling internationally and they're coming back, that's when you'd use a carnet, and it's for, cameras, stage equipment, things of that nature, not, like, personal effects.
Right. And I did see. Okay. So that I mean I know we're not going into a tremendous amount of detail of how a carnet works and how you do that, but
Mhm.
I mean there is a process that one needs to go through and create their carnet through a authorized. Gosh, I wish I knew what they were called, but anyway, like it's someone who is authorized to write up carnets. I know here in the
The
states.
customs brokers will help you, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I know that here in the states there's several, that, and I know we worked really closely with a couple of folks here that have that as a business that do
Yeah,
carnets
there's
and that.
specialized carnet companies now,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So, anything else? I guess that might be interesting. I guess the takeaway here. You tell me what would be the
I
takeaway
think
here.
the takeaway is if your goods are traveling internationally, right, but they're coming back home, you're not selling them, they're not for retail sale, don't overlook a carnet. It's often one of those things we don't really hear a lot about, but it's helpful. And especially in these situations where, there's a little bit of, tariff uncertainty sometimes, and we just want to make sure that we're doing the best business-wise or for our clients if we're advising them. So,
Right. And I know they do cost something to get those written up, but it doesn't cost nearly as much as either A, the trouble of doing the
yes,
documentation paperwork going in and out, and B, paying the
the
tariffs.
duty,
Yeah,
yeah, or
yeah,
just trying to recover it or just the unnecessary work, basically, right? It might
right.
take a little bit of work up front for your carnet, but in the end, it's gonna be less than what you would spend for sure.
Right, especially if you have like we said earlier, it is a passport, and I know it has a validity of X period of time, and you
Yeah,
could be
there's still
going.
times.
Yeah, if you're going on tour, like again, if I was going to Brussels for ICPA, and I happen to jump over to Germany for another event, let's say, and then I jump over to the UK for another event, I
Mhm.
can actually use the same carnet without having to worry about again all the entries and or refiling a new carnet.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
'Cause it's a system that, is recognized. So
exactly
that's very
correct.
helpful. Mhm.
Great. I did hear that the. I mean, this is kind of a little sidebar and being silly, and it has nothing to do with carnets because I know they definitely didn't do that. I heard the Norwegian team shipped in 2,000 pounds of their own food from Norway to the United States because they didn't want
They don't want
to.
our food.
They didn't want our food there because of all the additives, preservatives, and everything. And it turns out it's actually paid off. They beat Brazil yesterday 2-1. They were underdogs,
Yeah.
so that's it, it may be paying off. Who knows? But anyway,
Right, right. They knew what they needed, their fuel. That's
exactly.
funny.
Well, thank you, Ashley. Thanks for this. Anything else, or
I
we're good
think
for
that's
this
all. Just
week?
don't overlook carnets. And if you have questions, reach out to your brokers. There are also carnet, services, as we said, but customs brokers will be able to help you as well. So
Awesome.
ask the questions.
Of course. Thank you, Ashley.
Yes. Thank you for having me.